Alright, I'm going to keep this video as short as I can. This video is to show you how to complete the project based on the artist Nick Frank, which we discussed earlier in class. So as a reminder, this project is based off of the idea of taking an ordinary object, making a selection of it, and isolating it so you can create a different background behind the image. So as you are looking through the examples, you will be creating the different colors in the background. We'll be using the paintbrushes and different opacity layers to create a textured effect of the different colors. You will need 5 pictures to complete this assignment, and then you will open them in Photoshop. For those of you that don't remember, press Start, go to All Programs, scroll down to Adobe Design Premium CS5, and click on Adobe Photoshop CS5 64-bit. When Photoshop opens, please open your first picture. Mine is in this folder here. So you need to find the pictures that you've taken, open your picture, and then you need to start to make a selection. As a review of the selection tools, you will most likely start with these two right here. You should start with the Quick Selection tool, which will select large areas of similar pixels for you to isolate. If the Quick Selection tool does not work, then you will have to use the Lasso tool to manually draw in sections. Before we start making selections, you will need to add a new layer, which is this button down in the right-hand corner that looks like a turning page next to the trash can. This is going to give you a layer to add the color to. So go ahead and click on that button, and you will have something called Layer 1. We need to switch the order of Layer 1 and the background. To do that, you have to first unlock the background image. So go ahead and double-click on the lock next to background and click OK. You're then going to click and hold on Layer 0 and drag it above Layer 1, so you're switching the order of them. This will allow us to delete a section of the Layer 0 and then be able to paint onto Layer 1 without painting over the entire picture. Now there are a couple of ways to complete the next step, but to me the easiest way is to take the Quick Selection tool and then either select the sky and delete it, or select the school and make a copy of it. To do that, I need to make sure that Layer 0 is selected, since that is the layer that has my picture. So I'm going to try making a copy of the school. Basically, I'm going to use my Quick Selection tool and make a copy, or select everything except the blue part of the sky. So as I'm clicking and holding, I'm selecting more and more of the school. But I'm being careful to not let my circle go into the sky. As soon as I do that, it's going to start taking giant chunks of the sky and make my selection very odd. The more I click, the more I select, and once I get over here, I need to click on small areas. Now I'm not going to do too much because I just want this example to be finished. If there was a part of the sky that I didn't want, I would simply hold down Alt to change my selection tool to a minus, and then take those sections away. So now I can hold down Control, press J, and make a copy, and then I will delete Layer 0. So I have this part of my picture remaining. My next step is to now paint in this background area to make my image look more like the Nick Frank style picture. So to do that, I need to make sure that my Layer 1 is selected, since that is the layer that I will paint on. The first thing I'm going to do is select my paint bucket. It should be the tool right underneath the eraser tool. If yours is a gradient tool instead of the paint bucket, you need to click and hold down and then move down to the paint bucket tool. You can put any color you want into the paint bucket to fill in the area. I suggest starting with white or black. If you do not have white or black, simply click on the square and then you can change the color to white or black. So if I start with white and I have Layer 1 selected, all I have to do is click once and it will fill in the entire background with white. The next step is to use my paintbrush, change the opacity to about 10% by clicking where it says opacity and dragging the slider down. And I'm going to use different colors of paint to add those thin layers of colors to get this gradient effect like Nick Frank. So going back to Photoshop, again, all you have to do to change the color is click on this box and you can select any color you want inside the rainbow here. Or you could take the eyedropper tool, which would be right here, and you can actually select colors from the picture. So say I want to take the color of the bricks, I can click there, and now my color automatically adjusted to this beige color from the bricks. If I click back on the paintbrush, I will then start painting that color into my picture. Now 10% is very light, so the more I click and the more I paint, the darker the area will get, as you're seeing right now. And then you can also go back to the eyedropper and select other colors from the picture. So say I want to take this kind of pinkish color from the library windows, go back to my paintbrush, and then I can overlay another layer of color on top of that. Now if you started with black instead of white, your colors might not be visible, so you could always go back to white as a color to kind of brighten it up. Every time you click, you're adding another layer of color. So when I let go and then click again, my magenta color is getting darker and darker. So if I go back to the eyedropper and maybe take a darker part of the bricks, go back to my paintbrush. You don't have to paint over the entire area. You can just do the corners of some of the pictures to add more depth. That's where Nick Frank kind of creates these gradients where there's more white in here. If you look at these pictures where there are colors on the bottom, these are the colors that he used when painting into the picture. So if we go back to Photoshop, again, you don't have to do the entire picture. I could just do some of the darker areas around the corners, and then maybe I'm just going to switch to black and add a little bit in there. So the final design will be up to you, but by doing 10% opacity, you'll have more control over how much color you're putting in, and it won't overpower each layer of color when you paint it. If you do not like the way your color is turning out, you can simply delete the layer with your color on it, add a new layer again, change the position, and then go back to your paint bucket and your paintbrush to start layering up your colors again. When you are finished, please save your final file as a JPEG. Go to File, Save As, change the format from a Photoshop file to a JPEG, and then name it Nick Frank 1 or whatever you want to call it until you have all 5 pictures done, and then submit them to Google Classroom, please. Once you hit save, it's going to ask you how large of a file you would like to save it as. Drag it over to the right-hand side to get the best quality, and then click OK. Again, when you're finished, submit them to Google Classroom.